right. It's a bit of a stereotype to let the guy from Berlin start at 4:20, but we have 47 slides to get through, so let's get started. Welcome everybody to this talk about thinking big, or our observability platform at scale. Or how I also said it, monitoring stack was yesterday. Now, some of you in the crowd might say, wait, what? Monitoring stack was yesterday? What exactly does that mean? And I guess the German-speaking audience in here would say, yeah, I mean, clearly I know what this means, because it's a German idiom that doesn't really translate into English. Looking too deep into the class. It is standing for something is outdated, like monitoring is outdated. Now, the question is, why would I use a not translatable idiom into, my English-speaking talk? Well, I'm sorry, it was a mistake. And after I put it out to all of the papers, like all of the talks, some English speakers said, what the heck does that even mean? So what that shows is we all make mistakes, right? Even for something little like adding a talk or doing a title. And that's why we need monitoring. Yay! Also in our daily work, right? It's complex systems. We really need monitoring for that. I don't think that's something I need to really talk that much about. But if you want to do monitoring, especially for your complex systems, like where do you start with monitoring? And that's easy, because if you like to monitor it, put a Prometheus on it. That's the de facto standard, right? Everybody, you can just run it as a sidecar. It's pretty easy to set up monitoring with Prometheus. But what if it's not just an app, but a full cluster that you want to monitor? And what if it's not just a cluster, but a full fleet of clusters, like a lot of data from a lot of different, different environments? In our experience at Giant Swarm is that Prometheus has its problems when scaling up, especially if you have lots of clusters that you want to look at. And it's not just Prometheus that we're talking about, because at some point you want to have Grafana for dashboards and data visualization so that you don't have to, query all the time. And you want some alerting so that your teams are not looking at dashboards the whole day and say, I'm so busy. And some logs, to see if they actually do something. And then some customer might come around and say, we want a Grafana per namespace because multi-tenancy. And another team comes around and says, we want a CLI integration because we hate using UIs. And are you even a product manager? And do you even have a product if there's not AI in it somewhere? So you put all that in, and then suddenly everything breaks, because monitoring is always the first one to break, and you become more and more reactive and jump from fire to fire, and you're only in firefighting modus. And you add more and more support systems to make that even bearable. And those support systems don't really fit the initial mission. Like in our case, we added a CLI to open Grafana on different environments. And guess what? Some other team just added another, open this app. And suddenly we had a CLI tool that opened apps in different environments, or an operator kit to manage the operator for our monitoring stuff. And then somebody used it for their own operator. So we had an operator kit for operating operators. And that all didn't have anything to do with monitoring, but we wanted to bring monitoring value. So what we did was we experimented with new features like tracing and profiling, while the rest of the bunch was still burning and trying to fix fires and all that. And we delivered the features that we were experimenting on to some customers, but then an incident broke, and the environment of the other customer was different. And so we had more and more configuration drift. And less and less documentation, because that was not a target state. And we won't document something that's not a target state, right? So this was us at some point. And I should have maybe started with that slide, because I guess if some of you work at observability teams or monitoring teams that went through scale, that could trigger you, and I'm very sorry for that. But that was definitely our experience. So the big question was, instead of continuing with the firefighting modus, we needed to regain control over our monitoring and our observability at all. But how? How can you do that at this position, in your organization? And that's where I come in, because, hey, I'm a product manager, product managing the shit out of products. And, I'm responsible for our observability platform, took it over when it was a monitoring stack, and what the difference that is. I'm working for Giant Swarm. We're doing platform engineering, so also Kubernetes fleet management is one of our capabilities, so we know about scale. If you want to know more about Giant Swarm, hit me up. But coming back to the topic, how can we regain control in a situation where our stuff scaled up and we're in constant firefight mode? Because I'm a product manager, and I might be a bit biased here, but just stop and do product time. If we come back to the talk earlier today, like the opening, right? Product thinking. First thing we need to do is understand the problem. And that was also that we wanted to find out what's the underlying problems that we have with our monitoring product in some sort of a product kickoff workshop. And what we did is this lovely board here where we just had a 3-hour session where we completely went off the rails and complained about everything. Just focus on the problem space and just looking at what goes wrong. What's the big issues? And we learned 2 major issues that we had at that time. One is the overview on what's the product, right? Remember the whole we need that, and then the supporting systems. We didn't really know what we were responsible for anymore, and where our responsibility and our product started and where it ended. And the second was, since we were in firefighting mode and just experimented a bit, we didn't really have a big vision about, what's the product in a year or so? What are we actually working for? So that was the second big part, and with that came around the thing on custom setups and all that. How do our users and our customers actually interact with our product? That was really weird because some were doing it more and some were doing it less, involved in the monitoring itself. And that was something we needed to find out. And the third one was then improve the stack with better releases and less resource usage, stuff like that. So let's jump into the fun bit and solve all the problems that we have at once. Well, let's start with the first one at least. The overview over the existing stuff. Easy, absolutely easy. All you do is just list all of the components you own, right there. You look at what's there, and then you put your name on it, and you're done. You have all of the lists of components that you own. And then what we learned out of that exercise is that it's definitely more than just Prometheus, right? We had a low-key for logs and events and all that. So it was no longer just monitoring as a product, it was observability. What's the difference? Well, monitoring focuses on collecting and displaying predetermined data points, which we all know as metrics, to track the system health, right? How is the system doing and all that? While observability is the ability to understand a system's internal state, not just the health, but everything, based on its external outputs, which also can be, everything. So monitoring is a part of observability, but observability goes beyond that and collects different data sources and connects them to each other to understand a full system state. Right, so we did more than just monitoring. We had more stuff in there, SLO monitoring, logs, events, stuff like that. The second thing is that we did in there was to just say, there's a cut. Everything that we add to the platform, every new component that is being added to our list of components needs to have a clear concept behind it and a clear documentation to make sure that we are not just adding stuff to our platform, but we really take a conscious decision that, this is how we want to add it and this is how it has to look like. But now the problem was with all that, put some work in that. Now we had a list of different components and concepts and documentation around it, but we were nowhere closer to really understanding what's the glue of all those components. Like, why do we have all of those different components, and what do we work on first, right? What's the next thing that we need to deliver there? So that brings us to the second big issue, the long-term goals and vision, really. Where do we want to go with all that stuff, with that list of components that we have? And also important in here, defining the clear interfaces for users and getting into a platform mindset for that. But now, Dominik, what the heck is a platform mindset again? You're thinking, you're talking about product thinking, now you're talking about platform mindset. We were asking the same thing when we started. And that's why we started again with sticky notes, those damn product managers, right? And their walls of sticky notes. We started to ask ourselves what actually is a platform, did brainstorming and a discussion around it. And what we came out with for us is the 4 defining points of platforms, right? Platforms just work out of the box. That means they are there already and you can just access them and, they work. You don't have to install them, configure them, whatever. And there are many different users that use the platform over the same unified entry point. So you have one point, everybody goes over that, so it's not different instances. And very important as well is that platforms have services, and there's service instances within the platform from the services that customers or users own. It's like going to the ice cream truck. You're not going to buy the whole freaking ice cream truck, and if you do, then let's be friends. But you go there and then you buy a scoop of ice cream. So the ice cream truck is the service, and a scoop of ice cream is the service instance. And it works a bit the same with platforms in general. So how does all that map to, how is that related even to observability? And how does that map to the observability platform? We did the same wall of stickies again to just see and discuss it. And then for us, mapping back, it was like it just works out of the box, means it comes pre-installed with all of the clusters that we work on, right? There is already monitoring in place. And we have default data ingestion. So there is a specific set of data and also a specific set of visualizations, dashboards that customers can already use. We have many different users. So for us, that was important to define that we are talking to internal, so our own Giant Swarm engineers, but also platform engineers and app teams of the customers. And the interesting part here is they have different requirements, right? Platform teams have different accesses to Kubernetes clusters as app teams have, and they are interested in different kinds of data. So we had to manage it for all of them, right? And then there's a unified entry point, which means we need a central storage and an interface so that everybody can access the same set of data and with the same visualizations in place. And when it comes to the important part of services and service instances, we just said, data is the important bit. Observability is all about data. So there's the data as a service, and then service monitors and pod logs and the different kinds of ingested data being the instances, visualizations, dashboards being the instances of that, and then alerts with alerting rules, alerting configuration and all that as the instances that customers own. So that already gave us some hints and some ideas on what was missing, what did we already have, right? Just make a is and a target state out of that. And then we already had some ideas on what we need to improve. But we wanted to even go further than that and really understand the user experience of our platform as well, because product, right? User in the focus and user value in the focus. And for that, we had a very lovely on-site, and we're putting stickies on an actual wall, like actual stickies on an actual wall, not just virtual ones. And what we did in here was going through the whole user experience from initial configuration of the platform to adding data, because that was one of the service, what you can do with data, then dashboards, because visualization was one of the service, and then alert management, because alerts was one of the service, right? That already gave us, and then the different interaction or the different user perspectives onto it, because, different data, different interest, all that stuff. Brought us to those 3 pillars coming back: data management, dashboard management, alert management, and then the interactions that customers can do within those pillars. Right? You can explore data, you can ingest new data, you can transform new data, and because there must be a clear interface to the customers and it's a platform, right? All of this has to be in self-service. So that gave us a clear direction and a clear split of responsibility between customers and ourselves. It was clear we own the services and need to make getting a new service instance as nice as possible, while the customers were responsible for the service instance. So we need to make sure that data ingestion is as easy as possible, but the customers decide what data will be ingested and what data will be dropped, because we also don't have the expertise in what's relevant data for all of the customers, and especially for all of the app teams, right? So that all gave us point 3. So improve the platform. Easy. Now we know what journey we need to do. We know what's missing from that journey, what's missing from that platform that we envisioned. And for that, we first needed to get a full buy-in into our central and open platform that was driving our product architecture. And that meant we were introducing product principles. So whatever we were working on, it needed to be central, because there's one platform, right? It needed to be open because it needs to be self-service and fitting to a lot of different environments, or else we would go into that drift, that configuration drift again. And it needed to be self-service because we don't want to hold the hands of our customers the whole time, because that wouldn't scale. So what we did was migrating from Prometheus to Mimir and Alloy, because Mimir is like this Prometheus on steroids that can be, it's a time series database that can store metrics way better. We switched to Alloy because it's open telemetry ready, so that we could switch to open telemetry protocol whenever we wanted to do that, which we didn't yet. Also interesting story, but not for today. And we wanted to keep Grafana and Loki and Alert Manager because that is part of the journey, right? And Loki we already had. But everything else was out of the scope. And that's really important because we knew we have those tools already in place, so no experimentation on getting any new stuff in, but making the user experience and that journey that we created really good with those products, right? And if that's good, then we can add some new stuff. Because if everything's burning and everything's hard to work with, there's no value in that. There's no value in a product that customers can't use. So first get that nice, and then we can add new things. And that's the whole architecture, if you're interested in that. Shouldn't be too interesting. The interesting bit is that it's very complex, right? But there's still the hardcore, the hardcore of Grafana, Mimir, Loki, Alert Manager, and then the whole data ingestion and data management on the side. The important bit is it's not about all of that. That architecture diagram is pretty interesting, I guess, but it's irrelevant for our customers. Because if we are adding anything to the platform, if we are working on anything, it's not about adding fancy new tools. It's not about tempo or anything in that direction. It's about improving the experience. Whatever we work on will improve one of those activities, will improve one of those pillars of our observability platform, and with that, really add value to our customers. So that, already led to our really fancy roadmap, because then we can also say, for example, data management is way more important than dashboard management, and alerting is more important than dashboard management because you really rely on alerting. So whenever something in the data management is open, that's more important than when something is open in the dashboard management. That already gives us a bit of a priority. And again, we had that whole list of what we have to work on, getting the platform foundation done, then getting the platform ready for more than just our internal engineers, and then working on dashboard silences and all that, and adding new types of data. And then fourth, we add AI and make lots of money. No, just joking. Do I? So that was just the main three issues that we had. And again, this whole process of getting out of that wheel, that hamster wheel, to just firefight and to fix all of the issues all of the time, to really having a roadmap that has specific outcomes and like really customer value that we can pinpoint. That was a year or something, a bit more than a year of work. And there are a lot of more issues that we are still working on and that we have been working on in parallel. For example, making our incident process in the meanwhile also really nice so that the amount of alerts are reduced and the operational effort is reduced, getting rid of technical debt and all that. So, this is the main journey in that side, but it's not all. Like, there's a lot of work. And even from that, that's 1 year later, you can still see the product journey. We had another lovely on-site where we put stickies on the wall, because I love to do that with my team. And we removed, like, down there you can see opportunities, so that's where we can deliver value to our customers. We removed like 8 of them and added 23. Because now we really understand what our product is, and we have experience with how customers interact with our product. So we had a bunch of new ideas on how we can improve the interactions. For example, one new activity, like we added a completely new activity where we said alert analytics, because now customers get their own alerts and they need reportings on, what happened last week in your platform, something like that. So yeah, we have so many new ideas now in how we can improve our product after we understood what really our product is and what the customer interactions with our product is. So wrapping all this up, first, be aware, is monitoring enough for you, or do you need more? Because this is, again, really scaled up. I don't recommend you do all of the overhead of managing Mimir just because you have one app and a website. Please don't do that. Prometheus is a really good product, and if you're not scaling a lot in the future, then don't do all of that. But if you need more than that, this is the way to go. So second, identify your target audience and their user journey. It's not about adding tools to your observability stack. It's about improving the experience of your customers when using your products, right? It's not about tools. That shouldn't be the discussion. That can be the discussion in the implementation, but find the problem first. And then the third one is improve the experience, and don't be afraid to say no if someone just wants to add some tools to it, and not focusing back on what these tools will have as an outcome to the experience. AI, wink, wink. It's not about the tools. And the interesting bit with that is, it's also not just about monitoring, because you can use this as a playbook for every platform capability out there. If you want to build up a new platform capability, ask yourself those 3 questions. Is what we're doing, like, is a really small bit already good enough for us, or do we need more? Do we need to scale it? Identify who's the target audience, and what they really need, what's their user journey. Don't add new tools to your stack, to your capability, but really make sure that it's a journey. And then continuously improve that experience, and don't be afraid to say no if somebody says your capability definitely needs some AI shit in it. And that's it. Thank you for your attention. Yeah, we have some questions. And by the way, there's more about the platform if you want to check that out.
Questions? Hi, Dominik. First, thanks for the talk. Also, in my company, we also use the LGTM stack. So I have the problem that we have a lot of data, talking about metrics, traces, logs. What would be your advice for making sense of all of this data?
So the big question first is, do you have to make sense out of this data, or does your customer have to make sense? You know, your user make sense of that data. I think it's always like, what's the value for your users? As I said, because it's a platform, there needs to be some stuff out of the box. We are also thinking about what is data that everybody can benefit on by directly going onto the platform, and have some default dashboards. Like there's a cluster overview dashboard because whoever uses our product monitors clusters, and there's like base information for a lot of people. And besides that, if you don't have ideas for the visualization, because it might be data that's very specific for one of your app teams, one of your whatever teams. We even have a marketing team now in our observability platform. That's weird, but all right. And they use some log information of the app to see customer interactions. But make the experience on how they can explore data. I mean, Grafana has this drill down feature, which is really nice. Make the experience on exploring data as nice as possible for your customers, and then teach them, make some trainings on how to use that. You don't need to understand how your customer uses that data, but you need to make the process as nice and easy as possible for them.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? I know you all want the beer.
Thanks for the nice talk. Question regarding Mimir. I took it that this was one of the main points. Prometheus did not scale, so you went for something else. How did you do that decision? How did you pick that? Did you evaluate other tools? Did you already have experience with Mimir, so you went with that? I mean, there's a lot. Thanos and Cortex and Victoria Metrics and probably 100 others. How did you pick the one that you used?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting question. If you've heard the talk that I had earlier today, then I can't lie, because Mimir was already decided, and it was on the, it was in the minds of the engineering team when I joined the team. But nonetheless, right, it's the same for Tempo or any other tool that we add. How do we come to a decision for that specific tool? Well, that is, again, coming back to, does it fit into our, well, first, does it improve the user experience? Easy. Second thing is, does it fit into our product principles? And then third, does it fit to the rest of the stack? With Mimir, it was because that was the big recommendation, the LGTM, looks good to me stack, which Grafana is really pushing, and we had Loki and Prometheus already in place. Also, the migration path was easy, but we took half a year or something just for the migration. It was a beast, and Mimir really had some limitations that we had to fight off, and contributed a bit upstream and fixed some other things on our side. So yeah, it's also a thing where especially I, as a product manager, have to trust in the recommendations of the engineers, and they decide what the implementation is, as long as it fits to the product principles and as long as it improves the experience. So I can link you up with our engineers. They can tell you more about why Mimir was especially the tool to go there. Thank you. All right, and that wraps it up. So I guess you have to drag me off the stage now. Thank you.